And that is the big thing, and that's the accountability to the people. And this is where I'm so happy to report to all of you, which is that in Niti Aayog is at the front, is the forefront of achieving this accountability at the very detailed level by our real-time monitoring mechanisms that we have set up under the Development Monitoring Evaluation Organization, the DMEO, which actually monitors more than a dozen ministries on a real-time basis and presents its results on an outcome-based performance evaluation to the Prime Minister and the whole body of us. That accountability and good governance, I think, must be at the key of achieving the SDGs. And I think this is where I would request the UN system, I would request Yuri and Nagesh, in that for us to be able to bring in as much learning as possible. And this is the learning which will have to come from our Asian brothers and Asian colleagues across from East Asia, much more than those who talk about the Washington Consensus and closing the government and throwing away the key, because that's not the way to do it. It's not going to be that, it's going to be the development state. So therefore, that's the first request that I have. And I said the Niti Aayog is, of course, fully committed to the government's agenda, and which is why we have undertaken, national and regional consultations. We've gone to all the states, we've involved them in the states. I have been to a few myself, and the enthusiasm in the state, ladies and gentlemen, is also most wonderful. It's really quite amazing to see the enthusiasm of the state civil society, of the government, of the academia for the SDGs. And I was in Bhubaneswar together with Ashok, and I saw that in practice. And I hope now this is what makes me think that to take that forward, can we in Niti Aayog, and this is hopefully my colleagues won't mind putting their agenda of work in public, which is that can we maybe have a ranking of our states on SDGs, and not all of them, and let's be most focused. The 7 strategies that Nagesh mentioned, I think, are enough for us to do the rankings. Just use those 7. Detail them, quantify them, and create a ranking of those 7 across our states. And I think we will do it. Next step would be to do the districts, if you can do it. Because, after all, the SDGs are at the ground level, at the root level. So can we do that? And I think this is something that I would love to do in Niti Aayog, is to call together a state conference. A conference of all our states on SDGs in Delhi or wherever, to be able to agree to this matrix of indices, which we can then use to start an index, to start a ranking on SDGs. And I think that will take the agenda even further down than what we have. Ladies and gentlemen, it is quite, and then, by the way, just to end this, is that as we do in the Nutrition Council, which I chair, report to the Prime Minister every 6 months as to what is happening in the states. I think that's the way to do it. And if we do, SDGs will become mainstream in our state development agendas also, and not something that they'll just take as a residual. And I think that might well make a breakthrough. But ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying, whatever we do in India would not suffice, because SDGs are a South Asian responsibility, and we have to do this in South Asia. And therefore, South Asia is the one which we will have to focus on, because you can see, if you look at this chart here, that there are perhaps all these SDGs, the least we can say is that they will be achieved better, and they will be achieved with greater efficiency if there was regional cooperation within the region of South Asia, if all the countries came together and cooperated with this. But there are some which cannot be achieved without regional cooperation. Given that our borders are porous, we can't remove poverty from South Asia until we have regional cooperation. That is your SDG 1. We can't do water, given that that we have the same river basins, and we tackle the water resource in a regional manner. We can't do pollution and environment clearly without regional cooperation. And peace and partnership goes without saying that we'll have to do this. And we know, unfortunately, that regional cooperation has taken quite often a back seat in this country. I am saying this as a person who has always prided himself in calling myself a Sarkist. In fact, there is a magazine, e-magazine that I started when I was a professor, senior fellow at the Senior Center for Policy Research, which is called, which has that name, which has the SARKIS as the registered e-magazine. And I actually appeal to somebody here in the audience to take that up and restart that magazine, because it's sort of really become dormant since I left Center for Policy Research and so on. We can start that e-magazine called SARKIS and focus it on SDGs. So it can be SARKIS SDG, and why not? Because there, by the way, we had an advisory board coming from all countries. We had invited articles, I think you would remember, so which is that, from everywhere, from each, expert from every country would be represented every time. So, and its logo, for all the rivers of this region, the 7 rivers of this region, the great rivers from Indus to Ganga to Brahmaputra, and Padma, they were the logo of this flag. So I think there's something that we can start off. But one thing which bothers me still, and I don't know, I'm sure it's my ignorance that covers, I don't know where trafficking is covered in SDGs. And that is something which really is, for me, a huge thing in South Asia. Whether it is narcotics or it is human, I think that is something that we need to tackle in South Asia. I was speaking to one of your colleagues, Judy, I think that was 6-7 months ago. I'm afraid nothing has happened after that. And I would love to see something moving forward on that, because that is again something which is a huge blemish on our region, and something and it must be a part of women empowerment and human equality. Unless we can do this, neither the child welfare nor the women welfare can be completed unless we have tackled that. So that's, now India has shown its commitment to South Asia, especially with the launch of the satellite, the South Asia satellite, which can be used for telemedicine, which can be used for teleeducation, for science, engineering, but most importantly with the weather. So far, South Asia has depended on its weather forecast by the satellites launched by other countries, and I forget, one is the American, the other is the European one. And they don't have the granular data of our regions, sub-regions, etc., which now the South Asian satellite can have. Now, I don't know how powerful or what, whether it's linked to a supercomputer or not, because when I had made this suggestion to begin with, it was supposed to have been linked to the Cray computer, to the, the other one, the Padm in Pune, because the weather requires that sort of supercomputing ability. If we can do that, we can bring to the farmers of South Asia forecasting almost in a real time and a very detailed level, so that each of our regions can suffer. So I think India has shown its commitment. We can do, perhaps, I'm sure we can do more. But here, let me shift a little bit of gear and to say that I think somebody said it, business as usual will not do. Business as usual will not do. So then the question is that what is it that we need to do? Therefore, I appeal to this audience and to the participants of this conference to come up with ideas which you think are just simply not practical, but let us have them. Because what you think may not be practical, it may be our challenge to make them practical. So let's try and do that. For example, can we agree to a regional monitoring system in this country for something? Just a monitoring, not a ranking, a simple monitoring system, and other things. And can we think about cooperation within capacity building without thinking of who will build whose capacity? It doesn't matter. We can choose the regional experts, allow across the SDGs, create a whole roster, create a whole body, a pool of experts, and then they can go across the borders to do capacity building. So those are some of the things. Gentlemen, let me end by by referring to the very strong appeal made by Yuri on climate change. I think it is critical. It is, of course, a civilizational challenge. I am just hoping, Yuri, that the country in which you are headquartered will also accept it like that, and not brush it aside and not keep opening up new oil pipelines and new oil exploration areas. But I assure you and everybody else that India's own nationally determined commitments are going to be overachieved. I can assure you on that. And I think that is a commitment that Niti Aayog and the government of India will have, that these nationally determined commitments will be not only achieved but overachieved. Because on what basis am I saying that? Just yesterday, I was in a conversation with one of the world's largest investor about solar power, and we were talking about the fact that not only do we want to achieve the Prime Minister's target of 175 gigawatts of renewable power, But by 2030, we want to achieve 370 gigawatts and actually replace some of our thermal generation with this renewable power. And then, if you remember, some of you might have been there, Niti Aayog had organized a global mobility conference where the agenda was to talk about shared, connected, zero-emission mobility across the whole country, and replace through 2- and 3-wheelers who are, I think, 38% of our pollution and 62% of our vehicles, by electric-driven vehicles within the next 10 years. We'll replace them, zero. So I think I'm saying, and similarly for urbanization, my colleague, Mr. Hardeep Puri, will tell you in great detail as to how they are planning for a much greener urbanization than we've had, especially in our 100 smart cities, in our peri-urban centers, and even in the rural development where we are now taking up those machines. So, in general, Yuri, I assure everybody here that India will stick to its national development commitments and overachieve them. I think it is for South Asia to find ways as to how they can overachieve, because as we all said again, SDGs are a South Asian responsibility. From Niti Aayog, I just want to assure everybody that we will do whatever it takes to push the SDG agenda forward at the South Asia level and not just at the India level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you all. As has been stated, the SDGs are the goals that each country has agreed to take on itself. So, and we in the UN are assisting the countries in achieving their goals through our technical support, research, and capacity building, and will continue to do so. As SDG is very important, UN has come out with a small memento or a logo on SDGs. It's a pin just to remind each one of us about the commitment which we have taken. May I request Dr. Nagesh Kumar to put those pin on all the dignitaries who are there on the. You can open and put the pin there on the coat. That would be.
No, not on this one. Thank you. Nagesh, the vice chair wants a box of those.
It's a magnetic pin, yeah. Now it's a time for photo session. So may I request the dignitaries on the sofa to please come first on the stage to have a picture with them. Rajuji, can you help them? Yeah, please. Yeah, please, yeah, come closer, maybe a little bit in the front. Sorry.
Thank you.
We are overwhelmed with but the photo session is not ending now. So, Okay, so they leave. Thank you. We'll take a short break of 15 minutes and please come back again at 11:15 in the room. Enjoy the tea and coffee, please. Ready to begin session 2. So may I request all the panelists and the moderator to be there. You're welcome, please. May I request all the panelists or the country representatives to come on the dais, please? मैं देख लेता हूँ।
आप बाद में देख लीजिए।
ओ ये तो सुनिए ना। But you have a PowerPoint or you have a you have PowerPoint? Okay, but you can sit here and you can do because the computer is there. Yeah, so you will just have to tell yeah next. Yeah, we have not put. No, you have that one also. Yeah, we have a remote. Can we have that remote PowerPoint presentation?